Okay, a couple people asked to see a little more specifics about how I painted this stonework. You can see in a previous video about how I made the stonework using modeling paste and styrofoam, but this video will just concentrate on how I painted it like this. So I have created a sheet here, styrofoam or insulation foam for a construction, and done the modeling paste. It's now dried. So I just find some paint. In this case, I started out with gray. This was actually leftover paint from interior house paint from a room we did, and I've watered it down quite a bit. I don't want it real thick, and then I'm just gonna paint over everything, and you'll need to sort of do the brush like this to get in between all the mortar lines, each stone. But it's just a quick wash. We're going to go through several different steps to get there, but this is the first and easy one. So I will now put this in front of a little dryer, little room heater that I have, space heater, tabletop space heater. Works really great to dry it quickly, and then I can move on to the next step. Okay, now that the gray paint has dried, I'm going to apply the other colors to the brick. And I only want the colors to go on the brick. I don't want them to go in the mortar lines. And to apply them, the paint, I use natural sponges. You can find these at a craft store, maybe something like Bed Bath & Beyond, and I just cut them up into pieces so that they're hopefully not perfectly flat. They have some variety, but also the size of the holes in it make for randomness that works well for this. Then I'm going to go back to the stencil that we started with to create the stonework. And I can put that right over top. You can see, I hope it fits directly over all of the stones, because that's how it was made, and that protects the mortar lines. So in my case, I chose to put on some dark gray, followed by raw sienna, burnt sienna, and then khaki tan. And you can use, of course, any colors you like. So I've just taken a piece of the sponge, put out some of each of the paints, and I'm going to dab some, start with the gray. I don't want a whole lot of paint on there, but I'm just going to randomly tap around wherever looks good. Really can't go wrong. And I'll show you what that's done. It has added gray just to the stonework in a modeled fashion, okay? Don't even need to let this dry or even rinse the sponge, because actually if you rinse the sponge, it doesn't work as well when it's wet. This is dry, but when it's wet, it's going to leave too much and not be look random like this. So I'm going to try this one. And I usually do try to hit the spots I have not hit with the previous color. Okay. Try some of the burnt sienna. You can see this goes pretty quickly, and maybe a little more. Okay, now you might leave it there. I have sometimes, and this time I'll add some khaki tan though, just for a little more variety. Get those spots we haven't hit before. And that's the stonework. Took just a couple minutes. Now I'm going to let this dry, because the next step I want to do is put a black wash over all of it so that it looks more worn and realistic in my mind. So I'll let that dry and come back. Okay, so now the paints have dried. It only takes a couple minutes with the heater. And I've mixed some black acrylics with water to make it very thin. and I'm going to just wash the whole thing, and we'll see. Maybe we can see the difference here. You can see most of it's going to come off, but this will help make for a darker, more realistic used colored brick. So you can see that it's much darker. It will tend to pool up in the bricks and the stonework. You can dab that off with a paper towel if you'd like, but I've found I can pretty much let it dry and it will look natural. It won't be blotty like it looks there, but that could be your last step. I'll show you one more that I do though, just to add a little more realism. Okay, so the black wash is dried, and again, you could use it just like that, but I also add some powders to make for the streaks of dirt that might come from rain and the steam engines that are rolling overhead. What I do for that is use a powder, commercial powder. It's by Bragdon, B-R-A-G-D-O-N. I've tried chalks and they just I couldn't get them to stick to the material, but these Bragdon powders have a built-in adhesive that helps them stick, and so I like them a lot. So I start out with some piece of wax paper that I crease in the middle, and you'll see why later. That helps me save the powder that falls off. And I also need to get a stiff bristle brush used for stenciling that you can find in craft stores under that purpose. Take some powder. In this case, this is a color called soot, but they have a wide variety of colors. And just barely tap it in there because it will bring a lot of powder out with it, and streak down wherever you think it makes sense. Tap off the excess, and you can see it falls down on top of the other bricks below. Makes for fairly realistic streaks, I think. There's light gray, there's brown, whatever you think works. And then I've got this powder here in the wax paper I'd hate to lose. It's not all that cheap, so I can just dump it back into the container from that crease. If you'd like, you can also finish it off with maybe a line of glue and then some foliage to make vines growing up or down it. But that's how I make the stonework.